Hey, right on. Welcome to the Cosmic Hype podcast, but now it's turned into the Cosmic Hype Conversations. Have your perspective elevated with the one and only Shandell Richards. And if I could take the moment, Shandell, because I wasn't going to do like all of your professional stuff, but who you are to me and how I've experienced you. So if you could just sit back and just receive all of this, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Okay.
Right on, Shandell. When I think about you and how you truly are a light and a village guardian. You're a keeper of the light and a magnifier of the light. When I think about individuals who embody compassion and love and truly are committed to excellent effort to show up for themselves and for their community, you are among those that I count as the host of those individuals. I'm so grateful for the impact that you've had in my life and all the different rich conversations that we've been able to share, from laughter to like some gnarly things when we had to work through some stuff in our professional setting. You remained a constant, real, authentic, positive, and genuine being. Always concerned about other people, always concerned in our context about the children and the families and how to show up for them holistically. While also, let's be clear, Shandell, your firmness is firm, but it's so warm too, right? Like you give me the energy of like, I will fill you up and I'm gonna drag you a little bit. Because a little bit of dragging is good. I'm not sure if that's from your people, from the West Indies and things like that, or it's just like your bombness, you know what I mean? Because let's be clear, grace and boundaries have to go hand in hand, right? And I feel like you embodied that in so many different ways. And just like seeing how you've consistently and persistently shown up and been committed to your values and your convictions, unwavering. And you do so in a way that's not like aggressive or like promulgating from a place of knowing, but saying like, I am your biggest cheerleader. What can we do? All right, let's make it happen. I've seen you help countless people, families, kids. You've helped get so many children and families in better situations in places that a lot of people don't see. And maybe folks don't say thank you, but I'm going to say thank you. I thank you for your light. I thank you for your space. I just thank you for you, Shandell. And thank you for being here. Bruh.
Thank you for having me. Wow, that was a lot. I really don't do well with compliments. So, I'm over here cheesing, smiling, jumping for joy on the inside. But Carmen, you have always been the light that I've always needed whenever things have gotten a little gloomy and dark. So I appreciate always working with you, talking to you, and just, filling up each other's love tank. So that's one thing that I really, really appreciate about our relationship.
Yeah.
And I owe you a million plus.
We attract each other like your mirrors, right? You can look out into the world and see yourself. And what I appreciate about community and the people that spirit, ancestors, angels, and guides of unconditional love and light and protection, my whole crew that you can't see, but I feel and I know. Yeah. What I also know is that they bring people to you to remind you of what your song is. When you start to forget it, they will start humming. Like, wait a minute, you a little off. Do you remember? You remember your song? It goes a little something like this, and it's like, oh, appreciate it. I was a little bit off. Like, if you hadn't done the Cupid shuffle, electric slide for a while, you're like, wait. Okay, there goes.
Oh, like, right. I gotta go left now, right?
Okay. We're not doing the remix. Got it. Okay.
Right.
And I just appreciate you also being one to help. Particularly, I love when you do it with children. I mean, I've seen you do it with adults too, but there's a way that you speak life into children and teenagers, and in a way that's unflinching. Like, you don't allow any kind of doubt for them to sense that you don't believe in them or what they're capable of, or that you love them. And I just appreciate how that just carries over in a lot of ways. This is not supposed to be a Shandell gush session, so
I did my makeup. I'm not trying to, cry. Shed any tears, Carmen.
Oh, right. We appreciate those too. Oh no, sorry. So what we're talking about today is kind of springboarding on one of the Cosmic Hype podcasts, being Grief, the Inevitable Companion. And I'm so grateful that you also agreed to speaking about the topic as well. Because there have been times, again, in our professional space where you also walk with me in my grief when it came up, and when it emerged with my own brother and his transition, and also after Tay was taken. That was a very difficult time, and you showed up in a way that was so warm. Again, the same you that always is, but is also you just allowed space for all the things to come up. It was like you had a certain kind of wisdom where it's like you just, with your little smiles, like, you got to just let it happen, Carmen. It's fine. You just just let it go. It's fine. And like this knowing little chuckle that you do, I think you know what you do when you have like an insight where you can see it for somebody, right? And it wasn't until, quite honestly, I started to renegotiate or re-examine my relationship with grief that you continually came up, you and like one other sister in Cartersville, Georgia. And I was like, I need to talk to Shandell more about grief. I need to talk about, you know, your walk and how it's blessed you and blessings and different things like that. Because I know in my own life, you've blessed me through that. And I also believe like through this conversation, like so many different gems can emerge for any of us who are going through that walk and that experience. So thank you so much for being here in the space.
No problem. So funny. Last night I had a conversation with someone I went to college with. She lost her mom unexpectedly. And I just, I gave her a call and it was just like, I'm checking in just to see how you're doing. And she just kept rattling off stuff. So I was just listening. And she was like, I'm so happy that the service really reflected her spirit and we were able to send her off. And my mom is not suffering anymore. And I was like, well, I'm calling you because I want to talk about the after. Like, yes, like today, yesterday, all those good days, those are going to be filled with people. But there's going to become an after where you're going to have to go through all of the emotions that you have felt about the situation, felt towards your mom, and forgive her in many different ways that you may have to forgive her or talk to her about certain things that you weren't able to talk to her about. And you have to be okay with that, but you have to really focus on the after. And the after, for some people, is very lonely. Like you have siblings and, you and your siblings, just saying that you all had different moms. And you're all in different ways, even though you're there. And there's going to be an after. And that's what you really have to take hold to and take heed to. And you have to go through all of the emotions that come with the after. So there's no, I was like, I know she's a very strong person. And I was like, you're strong. You're not really, you don't want to show any emotions, but this is not the time to hide any of those emotions. If you have to go to the bathroom and cry. If you have to journal it. You have to scream. Like no one's judging you. This is your process. But you can't skip the process because once you skip that process, it's my true belief that you become sick. In different ways. Maybe physically, it could be mentally, spiritually, but you have to kind of let those emotions ride. I'm a true believer in that.
Absolutely. We're definitely going to talk about that. Yeah. There's so many there's like 4 or 5 different things just in that where I'm like, yep, got it. I want to talk more about this. And also if there's a question that has been asked that doesn't feel good, or if it's prickly, it's like, I don't want to visit that. Please let this be the invitation. Say not today, not right now, not that one. Yeah. Cool. So one of the first questions, could you share kind of like how I guess your introduction to grief on this level, like that soul jarring grief, like you might lose a dog.
Yeah.
You might not get on the basketball team, but when you lose a core immediate family member, or not necessarily lose, when they transition from the physical realm to the spirit realm, it's a whole jarring element. But I would love to hear if you're willing to share that.
Yeah, of course. Well, my grandmother was like probably the first person that I experienced like a loss with. She was older though. So she died in 1998. No, I'm lying. Yeah, 1998. And at that time she was 86. So, I'm like 12. My grandmother was always old my whole entire life up until then. So you watch someone transition in the Caribbean, once the elder transition, it's more of like a celebration of life. My most traumatic loss was the loss of my mom. In 2009, my mom and her common law husband, they were murdered. It was a double homicide, a robbery gone wrong, right? And I thought, did you know this story? Oh, well, we're going to talk today.
I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do with my face with that. I was like,
oh, good. No, it's all good.
Okay.
So in 2009, my mom and her common law husband, they were murdered on the island of Tobago. I just so happened. So it's a crazy story because on December 2nd, I decided to actually move to the island of Tobago. My mom owns a business there. So did her common law husband. She was a boutique owner. She lived there since like 1993. I've spent part of my elementary days there. So I did all of elementary school there, and then I moved back. But my mom, she lived there, and she would come back and forth between New York and Tobago. So the recession happens. Remember the whole recession? I graduate in this recession.
Mm-hmm.
So she temporarily closed her store, and she was in New York for like a very long time. So I had lost my job. I was at a podiatrist's office, and he quickly, I was a receptionist. He was like, "This is not for you. You're fired." And I was like, "Thank God. I'm about to go live my good island life." Right, right.
Right.
I'm about to go with my mom. We're about to, revamp, reopen her boutique, and just be a part of the family business because traditionally my family, they're entrepreneurs on the island of Tobago.
Mm-hmm.
They own grocery stores. At one point in time, they owned the KFC. I still have an aunt and uncle that live there. So,
You make so much sense to me now. I feel like this background's like, oh, okay.
Right. So on December 2nd, so I decided to go to Tobago first on December 2nd. And I left. I told my mom, I was like, "Mom, we're gonna devise a plan, right? I'm gonna open. And I'm gonna open so people know that the store is open again," because she was a prominent business owner, people will always come to her for fashion. She was a well-dressed, well put together Virgo lady, and they loved her. She was affectionately known to many as Aunt Daisy. Had tons of friends, tons of pseudo nieces and nephews. And I was like, I'm going to go. I'm going to open up. It's okay. We're just going to open whatever inventory you have in there. I'm going to shift things around. I'm going to reorganize the store, and you're going to stay here and you're going to finish shopping. And then you come back on the 12th and we're going to do a little mini fashion show. We're going to do a grand reopening, all these things that we're planning to happen. And this was the first, and this was around Christmas. I was so excited because it was the first time in like about 12 years that I would have been able to spend Christmas with my mom, because every year she would sacrifice either coming to New York and me going down there by just giving me money. Like, "You're going to school, you're in college. Instead of me buying a plane ticket, here's the money so you can buy books, so get ready for your next semester," right? So, which was great. So I was excited. I quickly learned though that being a boutique owner was slow, like a job for someone who has like a lot of patience. People aren't coming in and out, and it's in a recession. You're like falling asleep behind the counter, just waiting for someone to come in. So I was there, and I wasn't only there, but I was staying at her house with her common law husband. So we were there for 10 days. He was picking me up. I remember one time we went to Western Union and sent my mom money back so she can come, shopping for the store, and I would think. So on December 12th, I you know me, I love doing my hair. So this is the thing about me. Like, I am a hair queen. You give me an opportunity to get some well braided braids with crispy parts, I'm doing everything in my power to get that, right? So on the 12th, I called my mom. I'm like, "Mom, like, my hair looks crazy." She flew into Trinidad the 11th. And sometimes in order for you to go from Trinidad to Tobago, you have to take a smaller plane. So you might have to overnight. So she overnighted in Trinidad on the 11th. And I was like, "Someone could braid my hair tomorrow." Just so happened. Remember, I was there in a house with the guy for those 10 days. His name is Kenneth. He's always been instrumental in my life from like a younger age. We've been together for, I don't know, years, 20 years, 15 years, So he saw me grow up, and, he was a really sweet, sweet man. Like, always would come and get me when I was younger. He would always do whatever Shandell wanted to do, right? Like, I used to buy stickers for his car because he used to have like a little taxi service. So he was a business owner too.
Right.
So I was there all 10 days. I went to get my hair braided. So I went and got my hair braided. And my mom said, "It's okay. You can go get your hair braided. I'm going to open the store." So she went to the store. She opened the store that day. I guess during that time, she called my brother and was like, "Shandell has reorganized this store. It looks so nice. I got all these new stuff coming in. I'm so excited." I spoke to her. She was like, "Yeah, Shandell, where are you? I'm going to get my hair braided." And I was just like, "Yeah, I'll see you later." And somewhere in between, while I was getting my hair braided, I used the restroom and my cell phone fell inside the toilet. So it just damaged it. This all happened in one day. So I get my hair braided. My cousin comes and he gets me, and we stop off at my childhood home with my aunt and stuff where we used to live. And they call and they're like, hey, something, you guys took down Kenneth and Daisylin's house. My mom's name Daisylin, aka Daisy, because they've been shot. And I was like, So we're driving, right? We're driving to this place, and I was like, I know my mom is okay. You're like this. I know my mom is okay. The night before, I went out with one of my cousin's ex-girlfriend. She was just telling me how much she loved my mom, how much she saw her as an inspirational woman. She would work so hard to make sure that she went to school, to send you money to go to college. And we were just talking and just talking. And I was talking about my mom last night. There's nothing wrong. Maybe somebody got injured. When I got there, my uncle-in-law's was the police officer that told me. She was like, your mom passed away. They've been both shot and killed. And I think at that moment, I was like in shock. Could not believe it. The last time I saw my mom alive was on December 2nd. On December 13th, at the wee hours in the morning. Last time I saw her again was getting zipped up in a body. And from then on, my life changed. The course of my direction of my life completely changed. Who I was, my expectations about life, my dreams. I was on the road to becoming an island girl. I was like, oof. I see you guys later. I'm about to go to Tobago. I'm about to live my best life on a beach. And then, at that time, I never really worked. I didn't have to really worry about much financially. But it was like, boom, a different Shandell.
And you said semester in college, so you were in undergrad.
Well, I just graduated from college that year. I was 23.
So you were brand new, like,
baby.
Wow, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine. And like multifarious, right? I think about how I blessed the time that it took. And it's very selfish. It's super selfish when I say this. And I recognize when I say it, how it's going to sound. I'm so grateful that I had 11 months to be with my brother. Like once we saw, we knew it's like, okay, it was like in the back, get your house in order, show up, go do those things. Like it was, we knew, eventually you had to kind of come to the place of like, oh, this is going to end exactly how we think 100% of humans end dead. Right. And it's a blessing that you have that opportunity to be able to spend, but you were literally living life for something to happen so jarring. How did that impact your, because you said a completely different Shandell. So you went from being an island girl, like, what was the change? What happened? What were the?
I think a part of, because I think I'm a naturally bubbly person. Yeah. And I can become very serious, I talk about all the ways in which I had to protect myself, down to just responding to people. I would tell people that when people would ask me about my mom, I knew I had to tell them like, hey, my mom is dead or she passed, right? And throughout that whole entire situation, she still had a store. So my brother and I had to sell the things out in her store and then get ready to leave, right? You're like,
capitalism didn't care about your grief and what you're going through? Bills didn't care?
Bills, they were like, you inherited this store. Like, what are you guys going to do? Because we have family members that are like, what are you guys going to do? What do you want to do? And I'm like, and my brother and I, we're 6 years apart, but I'm like the big little sister. The little big sister. And I'm like, I'm not coming back. So we need to do whatever we need to do right now so we don't have to come back. Like whatever we need to do. If we have to go clean out her stuff out of this house, we have to do it now. If we have to go and like sell as much stuff in the store, we have to do it now. We have to do it now because once we get on this plane, I'm not coming back.
What was the time period of that where, everything happened and you're like, this has to happen because I'm not coming back?
This was like a 2-week time period because I was back in New York by January 1st.
Shandell, you mean to tell me this extremely traumatic event happened? You had to like settle all your mom's affairs,
As much as
arrange
possible.
funeral arrangements, and all the family.
Mm-hmm.
And you did this in around 2 weeks. So how tell me about grief. When did grief enter into the
So
chat? When did you make space for that?
So I think I've been blessed. Like I said, my family members, my uncle and my aunt, they're business owners. So my uncle he's a little bit affluent on the island. So he
Mhm.
made sure he took care of all of that. So it wasn't like I had to think about what to do
Mhm.
or how
Mhm.
to pay for this. My uncle was like, listen, I write a check. This is
Mhm.
like I'm taking care of that. And my aunt, I have an aunt that I grew up with too in Tobago. She kind of
Mhm.
stepped in and did some of the stuff. I
Mhm.
did like the eulogy thing. They really like rallied them because we were young. Like I'm
Mhm.
like I'm still a child. Well, 23 isn't a child, but you're still a baby. And when you think about it, like
Yeah, yeah. But and in that, this is something that our and I'll come back also because I had something else come up that our marriage counselor talked about is like because life is happening like with our parents. My father passed away last year and things like that, and she was saying you're now being initiated into adulthood, or into
yeah,
an elderhood. Like this is part of the initiation is dealing with the transition of your elders and like taking on the mantle of that, and to think about how your initiation happened at 23, like
mhm.
your one of your first initiations, like that's so powerful. And the fact that you also and I know that speaks a lot to who you are, and I think it also speaks to the strength of Black women, right? That even when everything's going on, the world has to happen and we have to keep on going. We still have to
Mhm.
show up. We still have to tie
Mhm.
this up. We still have to take care of people and things like that, which brings me to something that you talked about earlier in with your homegirl, that you have to allow that to happen. You have to allow yourself to feel, because something that I realized when I was because I was holding on to the pain and the grief so much because I felt like that was the sign of loyalty and love and how deep it went, because I was just so angry and everything else like that. Because I also, believe it or not, I used to be funnier and sillier. This is, yeah, post grief, straight laced. This is me, right? Maybe it's good because I probably would have been a little annoying, but like there was a certain level of like very serious and like very concrete and just a raw nerve that was there. And what I ended up doing, just because my own pattern, I started to close down and shut off because one, I was losing everything. I'm not going to lose this pain.
Mhm.
Not going to lose this anger and this unjust feeling and everything else like that. I had zero space for joy and love and laughter. I was like, how dare you, the world, keep going when my brother is not here? How
Mhm.
disrespectful of the world. Did you just eat? How dare
Mhm.
you eat? Right. And I realized that so much of what I was doing also in that time, because I was still teaching, I was still leading schools and dealing with everything that happens with that, was that I was compartmentalizing. I was trying to push everything down. Like when
Mhm.
you're at the pool and you have those cheap like supermarket balls, that's inflatable and they're like tie-dye, they're like $1.50 or something. They're super cheap. But if you go to the pool and you play with them and you can kind of like put your body over them, you can hold it for a while, but eventually it starts to slip.
Yeah.
And that ball will fly up higher than the original level of the water. And that's what I was doing with all the feelings and the pain. I was just trying to compress it down, but it was slipping,
Right.
inevitably slipping in different ways. Um, did you have At what point did you start to allow space for your feelings to be honored? I guess.
I think right away. So when my mom passed away, I also had a news reporter that showed up to the house to interview because they were known,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It just feels so callous. It just feels super callous. I know that that's like literally news, but that just
Right.
feels.
It is news. But one of the things
Mhm.
that I told the reporter was, she was like, how do you feel about the people that murdered, your mom and her common law husband? And I was like, God only knows what they've done. They've made a mistake. I cannot, there's nothing that can, I was like, I can care less what happens to them. To this day, I care less because there's nothing that can happen to you that's going to bring back the thing that I want the most. So that was number one. I was like, because if you live or you die, it doesn't matter. If you live and you walk around in society, you're always going to be known as a murderer. Tobago's this big, right? Like, and they were known people. It wasn't like there were two people that no one knew. They were
on the loose.
yeah, like they were known people. They got captured like the next day. But they knew my like I said, my mom and her common law husband, they were known, right? Everyone loved them. So I was like, I don't care what they do. God is gonna deal with them. And then so we did the interview, and then at the end of the interview, she said, Shandell, I just lost my mom maybe like a month ago. And she was like, the one thing I'm gonna tell you to do is cry. That was the number one advice that I took. And it's the same advice that I give everyone. So all I did moving forward was cry. I cried so much, right? Like, I cried so much. I cried so much that I learned how to put myself on a crying timer. That means I knew that I needed to get up out of bed and I would say, okay, it's been 3 days. It has to end by tomorrow. You need to get up. And then I eventually got a job and I would go to work and I would break down in tears. And I was like, okay, you got 10 minutes to cry because you have to get up and you have to go back out there and you have to go to work because life is going to move on. And that's exactly what I did. I just kept crying, but I would cry anywhere. Like I didn't care. People would watch me just like crying. I didn't care, but I cried whenever I wanted to.
Yeah. I wish that I gave myself that space earlier on. Once our mind transitioned, so he transitioned December 4th. His celebration of life was December 13th.
Wow, that was quick. Yeah.
Right. And I was back at school at the end of winter break. So I was right back in January. And I know that I did that as 110% avoidance.
Yeah.
It was all avoidance because I'm helping children. They need me and they bring me so much life. And I just occupied the space. What I like to call it is productive avoidance, right? It's still good stuff. I was still being with children, so on and so forth. And I was dying inside. It was so painful, right? And it was by trial and error. And quite honestly, went to the hospital. Like I passed out eventually because your body will, my daddy would say, bend your knees or have them broken, but you end up in the same place. That if I would have just allowed myself to be in it.
Right.
I don't know. I think because I witnessed how my mom was so strong from what I saw, because we lived in different places, right? She's in South Georgia, I'm in DC. So we're going through our experience differently because in the times that I did hold space for her, I was trying to hold her up. It wasn't her holding me in that space of crying. So I think within myself, I felt like, okay, you just need to be there for everybody else.
Oh, wow.
That means in your job. That means in your family. That means doing all this stuff. So I took on an implicit responsibility and onus to be stoic or something like that. Like it would be very rare that I would allow myself to have the surrender of crying. And I am not cute. Whatever, not cute. It's just that everything gets swollen, right? And everything gets just snotty and just red and just like, there's no getting away from it. And then inevitably people are like, well, what's wrong? Boof, boof. I'm just crying again. And I'm still working on not getting irritated when people say, I'm so sorry. I was like, did you do it? Are you?
Well, that's their natural reaction. That's what I've learned. Like, like, and I will say this, like during that time, it was a very lonely time for me because my brother went off and he went back to his little family. My dad was, just grieving on the couch by himself. I had an aunt that practically raised me. She moved to Antigua and I was just me. So I was literally, which I tell people, I was like, that probably wasn't a good thing for me to be so much by myself like that. Yeah. I was by myself and I inundated myself with positivity. I almost thought I was going to become like a pastor. I swear to God.
Do you feel like that was helpful? Because one of the things that I also realized was that my mom and I had very different responses. Like she went very religious and I went completely spiritual because like we did all the things we were supposed to. He had brain cancer and so it was an 11-month transition. So we did all the things. We laid hands, oils, tithe, went to homeopathic, we fasted, we did all the things by the book. Did right. So like one of three things had to be true. Either the scripture was a lie, God didn't care, or my understanding was completely off. And that was the only thing that I could lean into. And what I witnessed, at least, and I have to give grace because my mom had to lean on something.
Mm-hmm.
I can't fault anybody who like dives into religion. How I cannot speak to a woman who's lost their firstborn child to brain cancer and watch that. How you going to cope is how you're going to cope, and I'm not going to judge it. And I also witnessed kind of like spiritual bypass. Like she wouldn't allow herself. It's all right. I don't need to cry because I know he's in it. Just cry.
Just cry.
Yeah. And like seeing her like utilize faith, quite honestly, to not allow herself to feel fully was an invitation and quite honestly a warning to myself to allow myself to feel it completely. Because I was seeing what it was doing to her. Did you ever have like, because you are such a positive person, and you said you were inundated, it's like, I know I got to lock my mind up, not go into that place. Did you rage out? Did you have anger? Because I don't see you as an angry person, but I know you feel everything. We all get the whole gradation. Did you ever get into a place of anger?
Yeah, I think I got into a place of anger for more so just how I was like raised. Like it was like, dang, this is the ending to your story. But there was so many other things in between where you should have made right. And I had to learn how to forgive my mom through that. There was like some like other things that I felt like as a mom, you know, like, and I know, and I like to say that I know every mother is trying to do their best for their child. Everybody's best is not, you know, it's not, it may not be the best for you, or you think it's the best, but I wholeheartedly believe that given the circumstances, the mindset that any parent has, they're trying to do in their best way of thinking for their child. And I think I was more so angry, like, why the idea, and it was so crazy because I think it was someone had gotten shot actually right after my mom was killed. And the person got shot in their head and he survived. And it was like the craziest thing. I was like, so why couldn't you pull through? Like, it was like, why didn't you hold on? Why was this person so much stronger than you to, you know, like, that they were able to recover. It was like crazy, like this crazy thought of why. Then the whys happened for years, and it was just like, why didn't you do? You know, this happened in 2009. I'm able to talk to you about this in 2024 very calmly and coolly and collectively, because this is years of just going through it. And I actually went to a transformative kind of like teacher yoga program. It was called Free for Change. It was the best thing for me. And I did that in like 2017, 2016. I think it was only then that I was able to talk about like my mom, because I thought it was the most hood rat ghetto-ish that could ever happen to anybody. Because I felt like people who are not good citizens, they don't get like that. Like, you know, to loving people. And I do work with that population, so it's kind of crazy to even think that way.
Woo.
Like, you know.
That's also levels, Shandell. Yeah. That's levels. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. Somebody might not know what you do, right?
Okay.
And I was like, oh yeah, because I guess like the folks who perpetuated this crime was like some young kids just
like
trying to get
20, 30. You know, two of them were young, one of them was older. They most of them,
yeah, just desperate decisions, just not thinking about the people in front of them and things like that. And meanwhile, your work has been committed to like trying to make a way for people who are facing the same kind of situation. Like, let me just offer you a different choice. Like, it could be completely different. Have you ever shared your story with?
Like, I share it with I've shared it with Miss Pinkney before. She, you know, that's one of our moms in our community that you know was dealing with like she was going through a real rough patch. And I saw her one day and I was like, let me sit you down and tell you my story. And she was like, I would never know. And I'm like, it's gonna get better. Like, to pull yourself up. It's gonna be hard. Time. Focus on the positive.
Yeah. You talked about how you inundated yourself with like positivity around you, and you went to like an actual training or space.
Eventually,
retreat.
Yeah.
What are you also doing to try like maintain or help your walk with grief? Because again, it never leaves you. Like you will always have this in your experience. So how do you walk with grief now? Like what are your practices or how do you walk with it?
So I think first you have to understand that you're going to go through stages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Denial.
Mm-hmm.
This did not really happen.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to really, then you have to accept the person for whatever it is. Then you have to find a higher purpose in all this.
Mm-hmm.
So my higher purpose, I found a purpose within my pain.
Yeah.
Because like I said before, I had no intention of working.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
None, zero. And someone told me to apply to become a teacher, and I applied to DC Teaching Fellows, and I said, bye to New York City, and I chucked the deuces and came to DC. And from there on, I realized that I kind of had my own life in my hand. It comes a little bit late time for some people. So most people make that decision or get that kind of like inclination around like 33, when they're like, oh, yeah, my mom, like, my dad used to do this, but no, I'm gonna forgive my dad and put that in the back burner. At 25, I didn't have anybody else to blame. Who else was there to blame? I can't call my dad. My dad wasn't working. It was a recession, and he was going through his own personal struggles. Couldn't call my aunt. She was going through her. Everybody was going through their own personal struggles. Damn. So I'm like, I have to make the best out of it. I'm moving to DC. Everything has to work in my favor. And then I developed this mantra that says, like, I always remind myself that winners always win, even when I'm losing, I'm still winning. So that's something that always plays in the back of my mind always. I'm like, okay, you're gonna win. It's okay. Like this bad thing happened, but life is ahead of you, and there's so many other great things that happen. I mean, I moved to DC. I became a teacher. I became a highly effective teacher. I became an instructional coach. I bought my house, that I've been living in for the longest in my whole entire life. So I gave myself stability. I mean, my house was renovated on HGTV. Like, there's so many other.
And also on Airbnb.
And I got an Airbnb. There's so many. Yeah. So you always find you're like, this bad thing happened, but I'm gonna live out the rest of my life for my mom because she's not here, right? So many things she used to love. Like, she used to love showing me off. Like, oh, come on, let me show you Shandell. Let me show you this hot thing that she got going on. Let me show you my daughter. Like, So I have to continue that. Like, like,
yeah, absolutely. I believe in. For me, again, Armand's transition really just opened up for me, like my spiritual consciousness. Like everything just became bigger, so much bigger that I was like, this doesn't make sense because I couldn't. And this is not an exaggeration. Now I know that people are like, oh, you're biased because that's your brother. Like Armand was probably the closest to being a just genuinely holy, good human being, just a good man. Like one of those types that you just feel completely yourself with and completely safe. Like he would hold men and allow them to cry. Like he was that guy. He would crawl around with the kids, but also hang out with, like, his name was H.Y.P.E, who would talk about jazz and things like that. Right. So like just a great human being. And it just, the way that I would explain is like, he was like plutonium in a tea kettle. That tea kettle could never hold such an energy and such a light. It almost now at this point, I'm like, cancer kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, it kind of makes sense that you can only be on this world for so long, but you also taught us how to love and different things like that. Like, I don't think that you have to go and find someone else to know, like, okay, this is what the impact of your touch is, like your life and things. And I also believe that when people have such an imprint on your heart, you're also part of their eternal life, right? You're part of the legacy that lives on here on this earth. It's not just in the beyond and things like that, but you are the breathing legacy of your mother. You're the extension of her eternal life every time you're doing these different things. And so when I realized that, and I said it before, like my ancestors, angels, and guides of unconditional love, light, and protection, when you have this whole host with you, you can show up in a very different way. There's almost like a boldness of like, yeah, I'm showing up in this space, right? This life is a vapor. That's what was reiterated to me, is like, he's 35. this life is a vapor. What am I doing with this life? Live each day as a page of my legacy. Live each day as a page of my legacy. Make a positive disturbance. And when there is truly not just a purpose of like, I want to make this money. I want to make this money. When it's not based on the ephemeral, like you move very differently. And when it's also, when grief becomes an invitation to alchemy, right? Because this whole situation made you turn isolation or like not having direction to the life that you have now. You would have been an island girl, which would have been dope too. Your legacy would have been a little bit differently, but your legacy is pinned beautifully right now by your hand. But you also had to have this jarring experience. It was part of it. This was a catalytic event to break you open. Breaking doesn't have to be a terrible thing. It oftentimes sucks. It's oftentimes painful. Let's be very clear, but breaking doesn't necessarily have to be a terrible thing. And sometimes grief gives you the opportunity to go ahead and break and almost have an excuse to break. You know what I mean? Allow things to be different and like, I'm cutting my hair off. I'm a new person and things like that. And I bless the walk, right? I bless it because I'm able to, and I think you could also understand this. We're able to hold space for people in grief in a very different way.
In a very different way. In a very different, you know what? And here's the funny part about it is I am like a very morbid person. Like, I don't think I'm the person. I'm not the person to, if you don't want the somber truth about stuff sometimes, I don't think I'm to call. Like, you not in a bad way. It's like, I'm gonna listen to you. I want you to, you know, but I'm not going to be the person that's gonna say, babe, everything's gonna be okay. I'm gonna say, this is about to be very tough.
Yeah. It was like, that's when you say, would you like me to hold or respond? Like, what you need right now? Because
I'm just going to tell you something, and it may not sound very fluffy, but this is about to be very hard, and you have to really take care of yourself in this moment. You got to pay like a lot of attention to what you're eating, how you're drinking, how you're moving your body. Really into yourself. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, dear, you know, like,
no.
I'm like,
there's a sister in our community whose husband had the exact same brain cancer that our mom had. And like, I was just talking just in general. She was like, he had what? And I was like, oh, he had glioblastoma. And she was like, are you serious? My husband. And so he was just starting at what was my first or second month of Ramon's 11 months transition. I was like, Niecy, do you want me to talk to you from a place of experience, or do you want me to just to hold you right now? I can just be a witness. Because not all the time do people want you to come and tell you it's going to be okay or whatever it is. Ask what people need. Don't just assume that you have it. And she was like, no, tell me what's going on. Nobody else is talking to me. I was like, this is going to happen fast, and it's going to be really hard to watch because this giant is going to bit by bit start deteriorating. And this is what it may look like. And take the time to record, do the pictures, ask the questions, do all the things right now. It's like, you are blessed that you know that what's going to happen. Not too many people on stage 4 brain cancer come back. Right. That's just the reality. But I could also speak to her from a place of, I overstand. Yeah. And I'm not going to hold you and be like, oh, it's all right. Yeah. The sun will come out. It's going to suck for a long time. It's going to be gnarly. And I'm over here almost 10 years later to say, you'll also get through it. And then you'll know that if and when it happens again, you'll get through it again. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, because I think far too often we kind of give people this fluffy idea of like, I don't know, like, it's okay. No, sometimes it's not going to be okay. And that's okay too. Like, you know, like at 23, I got inundated with just positivity. Positivity. I also started doing hot yoga, which I loved. I did that crazy in New York City. I boxed. Right. I used to go to boxing class. And then I also danced a lot. I went out dancing so much. I think my feet has like a little fire, create a little fire around. Scary. But I was like, I am not going to be, I know that I'm sad during the day. I know I have my sad, but I'm going to enjoy. I'm going to try to have fun. So I try to have as much fun as possible, but balancing a lot of different things. But I was also very isolated. So whenever I was crying or I had journaling or experienced those things, I was very much so by myself because I realized that all of my other friends, they were young. right? They were young. When I would tell people like, "Oh, why are you sorry?" My mom died. They'd be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry."
I couldn't imagine if my mama died. Yeah.
They didn't understand. They haven't had anybody in their life that had died that was close to
Right.
them. No one understood that. So
Right.
it became like, well, I can't be mad at my friend. Like I started to
Mhm.
understand that very like quickly. Like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm trying to look for sympathy or empathy from this person, but they don't have it because they don't understand it.
Wow.
They
The
don't.
word that keeps coming up for me is grace for you. Like the level of grace that you give and extend and like understanding. It's like, well, maybe this, like you just assume the best of people. And I'm sure that that also is probably pretty helpful in the healing process too. Like if I had your lens and hearing back in the middle of mine, I probably would have interpreted a lot of other people's stuff a lot differently and a little bit more graciously, right? I wasn't at this point of being able to just have this very candid conversation without welling up and be like, I need to stop until like maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like with the pandemic counting that, right? So it's pretty recently. And it is, my mom will often say when people do or say something that's just kind of ridiculous, she'll say, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And
They
it's
don't.
like that kind of plays in my background. It's like, I just have to forgive them. They don't know what it is. They don't get what it is, right? Or like when fall comes and I start to feel it and it starts to
Mm-hmm.
come out. But oh, that's a good one. How do you feel like the anniversary days very deeply? What do you do to like prepare or to do you ritualize it? How do you
My
handle?
mom is a big dresser, so I might just like get dressed for the day. You
Yeah,
know, my brother and I, she loved her little cocktails. So my brother and I would call like, we had a cocktail for mommy today. Or I'll call out of work. Quite
yeah.
frankly. I did that one year. I sent my boss, I was like, this is the time around my mom's death anniversary. I will not be at work. Sorry.
Mhm.
I'm not sorry. I can't
Yeah,
handle it. Like,
yeah. It was
yeah.
just a known. It was a known. December 4th. I'm not. I've
Yeah.
tried and it just was no
No.
good. Yeah,
I'm not
I
gonna
had
force
to.
myself to do it either.
You said what?
I said, I'm not going to force myself to do it. No.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. What helped me, and this was actually in the last couple of years, because I was talking to my mom, and she was sharing a memory that I absolutely shared and had too. And that was just when our mom was like 16. He just decided one day in the summertime, because we couldn't afford going to camps and stuff. He was like, "We're going to the library," and he just put us in the car. And the 16-year-old, without prompting from anybody, just started taking us to the library like 3 or 4 times a week. Like that was just part of our summer routine. They'd be like, "You can get 2 books." And then we can maybe get a movie. And like he just kind of exposed us to so much, but I had forgotten about that. And that was core memories for years. And that made me stop and pause. And I was like, wait, I've been holding on to this pain and grief so hard that I was losing memories. And then I was like, wait a minute, let me make sure. Okay, I still have his laugh, but I
Mhm.
was holding on to the grief and the pain, and I can't believe you're not here, and this is unfair, and all this other stuff that I started to forget everything that we had that was so tender. So at that moment, I decided I was like, I'm not approaching this season in the same way. I'm going to do
Mhm.
all the things that are reminiscent and vibrant of, or in the same vibration of our relationship. So tender things, food things, nature things, art. And so I crafted like I guess kind of like a month of ritual ceremony of different things to say this is a celebration. I celebrate our love. I celebrate our connection. I celebrate that he's my soulmate.
Mhm.
We're one and the same. If you know me, you know him, but he's so much cooler. So much cooler. I'm the cheesy brand. But he met me on that, right? So like doing the different things that would I know make him laugh and I could remember that laugh and I could feel him with me. And it's also my responsibility to be mindful of that, right? Because when the season started to come, at least for me, agitation would come up. I'd get a little bit short, right? Like I would feel very irritated. And it wasn't until I was being more mindful about fall because it's my favorite season, but I could feel it in the background, like winter's coming. You
Yeah.
might like it, but winter's coming. But it's supposed to like winter's coming. It's like, what are you gonna do to celebrate our like changing the narrative, changing the perspective to something else? Because this is an inevitable part of our life. So how do we learn to walk and live with grief? And sometimes grief will just is not such a great companion. Like, dang, you just really mollywopping out of nowhere. You just bombarded me with a smell or a song. For me, it's Together Again, Janet Jackson, Together Again. If I hear that, like, okay, I'm good, right? And it also, I feel like when those happen, as opposed to like, oh God, where did this come out of? It's like, maybe you just need to pause and be in gratitude right now. Maybe
Well,
it's a pause in here. Go ahead,
yeah,
please.
I was gonna say, well, your memories are the proof that they were alive.
Yeah.
You so have to like you have to
Mm-hmm.
honor those things. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I remember. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you do
Mm-hmm.
remember because they
Mm-hmm.
were here. Just because they're
Yeah.
gone, they were here. They were here.
Yeah. And I would take time and just like look at my hands and be like, you two shared the same DNA. Like if you were to look at the biology, so you literally carry him with you. If I needed like the tangible, like I need to feel you, I could literally just wrap around myself. So let me love on myself, because he would do that same thing. He would be like, he would call me La Carmen. I don't know why it was La Carmen. That's never been my name. It's always only been Carmen. He'd be like, come on, La Carmen. Let's go.
Aww.
And like we would go on a hike or something like that. And so like when I feel that coming up, what would he say? You know, like how would he would also drag me. He would be like, what are you doing, dum dum? And that's my accountability of him also, you know, showing up in those different ways, but recognizing that I breathe him as much as he breathes me. You know, and there's no separation. And so that is also something that I carry, is that knowing, you know.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What is something that you would, because we have like maybe 10 minutes. I want to make sure you have the space and time. If you had a message about grief or the walk with grief that you would like, if the Lord came today, this would be on the tape.
I would say to hold on to faith, whatever faith means to you. So you should believe in something higher outside of yourself. I don't know. It could be music, whatever that means to you. You have to hold on to something that is outside of you and that's positive, because that's all you have, right? Like it's so easy to fall into the trap of negativity and darkness. That's the easy part, right? You can just be like, you know what? I'm just gonna allow all of this to swallow me. I'm gonna stay down. I'm gonna be in bed for the next 30 years. You know, I'm gonna still I'm not gonna be able to move forward in life, even though life is evidently moving, right? These plants grow, leaves change, flowers bloom, and that cycle continues. And you know, you have to really make sure that you are continuing on regardless. So that's a very hard thing to do, because now you have like a special little, I call it like the bag of ish. You know, you may have had like a duffel bag before, but now this little extended piece onto your duffel bag that you have to carry in life. So hold on to the positive. I also think that you have to give yourself grace and the people around you grace. There's going to be times where you're not going to be good, and that's okay. And there's going to be times that people are going to say things to you that's going to be extremely triggering because they don't know what to say. No one, I never met anybody that really knows what to say when you say, hey, my loved one has passed away. The next thing that they're going to say is, I'm so sorry. Like you said, what are you sorry for? Please accept my sympathy. What does that mean? Like, what is that doing for me? And then some people are going to try to be nosy. What happened? How you feeling? What you need? Can I do? And you know, and some people, you just want to be like, I don't want to talk. So you have to understand grace. Give yourself grace and give that other person grace, because they're in a weird space too, because they don't know what to tell you, and you don't even know what to accept. What do you accept? And then you have to also remember that time is the thing that heals all wounds. It sounds so cliche. I mean, like I said, this happened to me when I was 23. I don't think I became okay with like talking about it until I was like 30 something. And now I'm 25 plus, but you know, 37.
Fine.
This is almost like 15 years.
Yeah.
I'm talking 15 years later. This is not someone that went through this last year. You know, like I've had to grow and develop into a woman My frontal lobe had to develop. Like officially, I had to go through life in order to. I had to go through all the emotions in order to come to this space today. So even when seeing me today and they can, they're like, oh, she's really holding herself up. Well, that's today. Year one, completely different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Completely different.
Absolutely. And there's no finish line with it either. There's no deadline or finish line. One of the things that I was like upset about, I was like, why am I still crying about this? Like, I would really get upset. Like, am I not over? I'm done crying about it. And Spirit's like, no, dear, you're not. No, you're not. Just embrace it. Yeah.
Always cry about it.
Yeah, I think the other part, the grace is also permission. A lot of us need to like give ourselves permission and not wait for someone else to give us the permission to heal or do the healing or to allow ourselves to feel through it. And I think another element that is also very vital is I know time heals all wounds. I also feel like healing requires intentionality.
It does.
Right? You can absolutely just be like, well, I'm going to be over it someday. And I feel like if you just wait on time to heal it, it's going to take a lot longer than if you're committed to like, okay, I'm going to feel it, but I'm also going to heal it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm going to go to therapy, go to grief counseling, right? Go to groups, do the different things that are the healing modalities for you, whatever that looks like. I love that you also shared some of your healing modalities of like dancing and going out and like working out and doing the different things that also heal it, because we store all that trauma also in our body. We are experiencing it through the vehicle of our bodies, right? So it makes sense that we would store so much of the grief and the pain and like the regrets and everything else that happens in our bodies in this vessel.
And don't also forget, I read a lot of books. Like during that time, I read a lot of books on grief and positivity and just transforming your mental and looking for the purpose and writing it down and making it happen. Like I've inundated myself with so much positiveness. Like I listened to anything that was spiritual, religious, anything that allowed me to understand the cycle that I was going through. I read a lot of literature at the time.
Yeah, because like going back to what you were saying, which totally makes sense and goes right back to metaphysics, is like you were given a world, not given, right? Your parents gave you, your mom gave you this world, this life, and like this is a potential track that you can have, right? And then a life-jarring event happens, and then it's up to you to then decide, if you will, what am I going to make of it? What am I going to make of this? This is now my experience. What am I going to make of it? Where are the BLESSons? Where are the orange slices and electrolyte peel, electrolyte packets to get us through, right? What am I going to make of it? Am I going to sit with it and it just be here? Or do I transform it? Because we are divine beings who can constantly create. We literally have the invitation and opportunity, like, what am I going to do with this pain? What am I going to do with this disability? What am I going to do with this knowing? What am I going to do with this trauma that might have happened in the sort? What is mine to do? Because me being this divine being and a law that doesn't care, cause and effect doesn't care who you are, it's just going to work. Repelling and attracting doesn't care who uses it, it's just going to work. Very much like electricity. Doesn't care if you're cooking a chicken or killing a man, it's just going to work. So what am I going to do knowing that I have the rest of my life starting now with this unlimited power and this ability to create something else? Does it take time? Absolutely. Sometimes you got to just keep doing it until it becomes muscle memory, because it doesn't feel authentic at first. All the healing stuff doesn't feel good at first. I feel like sometimes it feels like, man, this is cheesy. I'm hurting too much. Too painful. You don't understand. Just keep praying. I know it sounds like nobody's listening, but just keep focused. Like just speak to it. You know what I mean? Keep writing it down. When no one shows up, keep showing up. Keep building the thing. And I'm so grateful that your life is definitely a testament of that. Have you seen Origin?
No.
Oh, never mind then. Not connected. You have to see it, and then we'll.
Okay, I'll watch it. Is it on Netflix?
No. It's in theaters now. It's Ava DuVernay. Like the main characters had 2 back-to-back my Lord, that's in her life. And it really helped to, again, crack her open and fuel her direction even more to do outstanding. Anyhow, it's always the invitation of like, when this thing happens, are we going to choose to transform it, sit with it, do nothing, curse it? Because a lot of people will curse the time. They will curse the time. I was like, but you've been given it. They will curse what happened. I was like, but if you curse it, curses come back. No curses don't go out and that come back. You know what I mean? And like to allow ourselves just to like walk with grief, truly, right? Because you know where Lazarus is in the Bible, the one who was resurrected. Do you know where he is?
No,
he's dead. Right. So
I thought you was like where he's like, no, he's dead. Yeah.
Dead.
Okay,
all of them dead. All of them, right? So we all are going to have to deal with this. It's like, how do we also start to, and let's keep it super funky. You don't get this. I have not received the strength and the peace and the direction and the groundedness that happened right acutely at the point of when he transitioned like any other time in life. I believe that's more so about me, about being able to tap in and the sort. And I also feel like you will get exactly what you need, exactly when you need it.
Exactly when you need it.
Exactly when you need it. It's like, well, I don't know how I'm gonna get through it. You don't have to, you just got to get to it. Yeah. Just get to it. The through it will happen.
Yeah.
Just get to it. The through it will happen. You know what I mean? And I think like when our loved ones transition, we never think about, I couldn't imagine me on almost 10 years later.
Right?
I couldn't see it.
Never think about that. Yes.
Right. Where I was versus where I am now. Only God and that whole host that knew, and people who were also witness to the grief is like, you know, you're going to get through this. You know, you're like, don't tell me that. I don't believe it right now. And you do.
Yeah. And it may become a point in your life where you're going to be alive longer without your brother than with him. You know?
I didn't even think about that, Shandell. Yeah. Like when I started hitting like when I turned 35, I was already kind of scared. At 36, I felt guilty. Now I'm about to be 40.
Oh.
I do think about as I get older, what that would be like not having my sage older brother, but I never thought about the fact that I'll probably be alive longer than he's been with me, or that's even So I have something to talk about in therapy. Thanks, Shandell.
Sorry. No, I mean, like my mom was 23. If I live to see 50, I'll be along, you know, alive longer without a mom than with one.
That's powerful. How does that sit with you? I mean, clearly you've thought about it, or
I've thought about it. I've thought about it.
When you think about like the grown woman milestones without your mom, what happens there? I know I said we were going to get done, but I just
so I don't have too many grown women milestones yet. The buying of my house, I felt like that was easy, you know. Plus, you know, I have 11 people always living with me, so it's always good because some people always coming in and they have a place to stay. But I haven't gotten married yet, and I don't have any kids, so I haven't really experienced that. I'm pretty sure it's going to be bringing up some feelings. Right when that happens, right? Because my kids won't be able to ever say they've seen Grandma Daisylin.
Yeah, that's something that I get sad about sometimes. Honestly, is like the babies will never know Uncle A. They'll just know paintings and pictures and stories of him. That's something that's hard, and I feel like that will be a new grief that I'll have to visit and sit with and like make space for when those come.
Yeah. And then you have to make sure that they know them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think my first one was when we got married, and that was bittersweet, but it was a beautiful day. Beautiful. Like he gave us so many different gifts throughout the weekend that it was so evident that he was here. And as soon as we poured libations and I said his name, like it was just like, I just wish he was here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And still, and everybody else kind of recognizing and knowing what that was and everything else like that. And it's a reality.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reality. You know,
Yeah.
we just have to figure out, and I know he will also direct us in ways to ensure that he is still very alive and vibrant. You know, might be part of morning routine, and we go and say good morning to Uncle A, or whatever it is. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotta make
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
the loved ones is kept alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Word. Well, I want to respect the clock, and I almost did by an hour. It's like 3 minutes. I was trying.
It's all
Because
good.
I mean, jet setter, you might have to, you know what I'm saying, do a thing and, you know, make sure your TSA pre-check is nice and tight and everything.
Right.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're also I'm just grateful for you, Shandell. I'm so grateful that you have always had your perspective elevated, and that you've always been I believe, and it's just what it is. I believe that when we were stars, we all kind of looked at each other. It's like, all right, I'm gonna meet you down there. It looks like it's gonna be wild in like 30 years. Like you wouldn't believe in 40 years afterwards. Like it's gonna be wild, but I'm gonna find you and we're gonna run down and we're gonna find each other and we're gonna make it better. So I appreciate that our star contract made sure that we saw each other and we're connected again. We can continue to walk as village guardians and light guardians, you know, as much as we can.
Thank you so much for this conversation, Carmen.
Oh, right
I
on.
appreciate it. Right on time for me.
Right on to the right on. Well, I appreciate you. And this, of course, was the Cosmic Hype podcast, Hype Conversations. And always, as always, please know that you are whole, you are holy, you are worthy, and you are loved. Have your perspective elevated. Right on.
Bye.
Me. In